Now, NHS operators have been asked, can't believe this story, NHS operators have been asked to request preferred pronouns of callers to avoid misgendering them. They've also been warned not to refer to callers as sir or madam. Now, do preferred pronouns really matter in emergency situations, or is it wasting time on virtual signalling and grossly irresponsible? I mean, would you care if you worked for an ambulance where they called you sir or madam? Meanwhile, Scots could face criminal records for calling someone a grumpy old man. Yes, a grumpy old man, under new laws that make ageism a hate crime. Well, joining me to discuss this is former Scotland Yard detective Peter Bleksley, who's not at all a grumpy old man. Well, you can be occasionally, I guess, to discuss this story. Peter, thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome.
You're going to defend this story, because I know you love this sort of story. It's proper old-school policing, isn't it?
Can you imagine 999 call handlers now receiving these instructions about pronouns? And when do you call 999? In a dreadful situation, possibly life-threatening. For example, you're cowering upstairs because you've heard burglars downstairs. Your house has caught alight, or maybe a loved one is suffering a heart attack, and a call handler is going to be concerned about by which pronoun you should be referred to. It is utter lunacy. It could be time wasting. But where is this all going to end?
999 operators have been warned not to not to assume someone's gender, because some trans women may actually sound like men, shockingly. So it's like, but Peter, I mean, if you are, as you say, if you're calling 999 for whatever reason, whether it's the police or an ambulance, and, you know, you are, as you say, you're scared, something's going on that you're really worried about, are you seriously, is anyone going to be worried about whether they're addressed as sir or madam or even misgendered?
You should only call 999 when there is a disaster or a very serious event occurring and you need the emergency services. And for the need of this training to be rolled out really speaks volumes for the quality of perhaps those who are taking the calls. It's 2023. Is it important in an emergency situation by what you call that person? Maybe, how about just ask them what their name is, and then you can develop that relationship with them. You know, yes, caller, your name is?
Sensible idea.
Yeah.
How much money do you think has gone into this as well? The SNP situation is the hate crime conviction punishable by prison sentence or hefty fine. And this is under Hamza Yousaf's draconian hate crime and public order legislation, which he first mooted while he was Justice Secretary, something he fouled at, by the way. And this is going to actually criminalise people for saying things like, oh, don't be such a grumpy old man. That is potentially a hate crime. What on earth do you make of that?
Yeah, they're seeking to add this kind of ageism clause onto their already largely mocked kind of hate crime because it's just stretched so far. Of course, we don't want insulting and abusive words used with regards to anybody. That's fine if that gets expunged from our daily lexicon of language. But in terms of describing someone as a grumpy old man, potentially, or, of course, because age applies to the young as much as it does to the old.
Yes, absolutely.
So should an acne-covered teenager irritate me, I might get in deep trouble if I describe them as a pimply youth, for example.
Yeah, or if you called me young lady. That's not going to happen, is it? In a patronising sort of way, though. You could try calling me young lady.
Well, back to the other one. I might well, of course, respectfully call you madam.
Oh, gosh, you can't do that. I'm sorry. The thing is with this, right, how are the police going to police it? I mean, you know, the problem in Scotland and in the rest of the country as well is we don't have enough police officers at the moment to tackle proper crime, to go to burglaries, to sort out people who have been sort of like, you know, are violently attacked on the street, whether sexual or otherwise. We don't have enough police to deal with that efficiently. So how are we meant to be policing someone that may or may not have caused offence by calling someone a grumpy old man?
Well, only recently, the National Police Chiefs Council made a pledge that they're going to investigate all those crimes, which, quite frankly, they ignored for years, shamefully. So, the burglary of your house, the theft of your car, the theft of your phone,
Well,
the theft of your bicycle.
Yeah, we're actually going to start investigating crime.
Yeah.
That was the headline.
Absolutely. Hello, I thought I was under some illusion that was what policing was all about. But so if they do that, I'm sure they will not want to be cluttered with this kind of additional potential legislation. But look at this week. Look at that dreadful tangle that the police in Yorkshire got themselves over.
With the
because
autistic girl.
a 16-year-old autistic girl apparently said to someone that a police officer looks like her lesbian nana.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we had an almighty catastrophe of a situation that was filmed, understandably, of a number of police officers
7, I think.
with a clearly distressed child.
Yeah.
And of course, yesterday the police announced, quite rightly,
Yeah.
that there is going to be no further action against that child.
Yeah.
A lack of experience on the front line, I think, is really coming back to bite the police these days. 60% of the Met's cops have got less than 3 years' service. So we've got probationary cops, teaching probationary cops, all the experienced ones headed for the back door when they saw the state policing was getting into.
Do you think that we will ever get back to the situation when you were serving of coppers nicking criminals?
I would hope so, because that really is the most satisfying part of the job. And it's why so many officers join today.
Yeah.
Because whilst it's a very important power to deny somebody their liberty, and it should be thought about, and there should be sufficient suspicion or evidence upon which to do that. When you take them by the hand and you say you're nicked and you know it's a serious crime and they're going to go to court and they're going to get convicted, that, for me, is what policing's all about.
It is indeed. Peter Bleksley, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon and not being at all a grumpy old man. Or grumpy youngish man. We have to move on now. Thank you, Peter.